Hey, it's Ron Dichter, and welcome back to another episode of Projecting Grandeur. I really appreciate everybody that has tuned in and commented and liked, and anybody that has shared it. Very much appreciated. Trying to get a good message out there, and it's been, again, really fun for me, and hopefully all of you have enjoyed it as well. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about planning, and more specifically metrics. I come from a pretty extensive sales background, and anybody who has been in sales, understands the concept of having a quota and understands, the concept of, the metrics that drive towards your quota. And as I think about just life in general and overall planning, one of the things that I've always talked about with my teams is success planning. And what I mean by success planning is really just having a, very specific and metric driven plan. And a lot of people think that you need to have metrics when you're dealing with sales, but really anything in life, there are components that make up what success looks like. And so as you think about what your goals are, you really have to start backwards. And what I mean by that is you start with what your goal is. Let's say that you are in a product-based business. Maybe your goal is to sell X number of products, or maybe your goal is to have a certain level of product development that you're trying to create. Or if you're in a service-based business, maybe you have a goal of X number of clients that you want to bring in, or X number of services. All of these things can be unpacked and broken down into, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then what are the different components that are going to be required to make that happen. So let me break this down even more simplistically. Let's say you are in sales, and let's say your goal is to sell 100 widgets in the month of May. And in the month of May, you want to sell 100 widgets. So the first thing that you need to look back on is what kind of data do you have that talks about all the things that you need to do. So let's say the first thing is in order for you to sell one widget, you need to have 3 presentations. Let's say your closing ratio is 1 out of 3. The second thing you need to look at is, okay, how did you get those presentations to be able to pitch 3 people? Was it walk-in traffic and you needed to figure out how many people you need to get in your doors? Was it a presentation you did at their place of business? Was it, the number of webinars that you did? Whatever it was that drove those three pitches, what did you have to do to get them? So maybe it was phone calls, let's just say. And then, from there, you needed to understand how many qualified leads that you had in order for you to be able to get those 3 pitches. And so you can break this down really simplistically to, okay, if I want to sell, 1 widget, I need 3 presentations, which requires me to get 15 leads, which requires me, to make 100 phone calls. Again, just as an example. So if that's really what your goal is, then you need to figure out how much time each of those things take. So how much time do 100 phone calls take? How much time does it take to do, or to get 15 qualified leads? How much time does it take to do 3 presentations? And then how much time does it take to fulfill, the 1 widget order? And once you understand those things, you can create a plan that will back into your goal. And so that's really, when I think about success planning, it's understanding what it is you're trying to do first and foremost. Once you understand what it is you're trying to do, it's understanding what it takes for you to be able to reach those goals, and then breaking down a plan, based on how many hours that you have in a week and how many hours you have in a month, to be able to boil that down. And the next thing that I like to do is I like to schedule everything. So let's use that example of 1 widget sale requires 3 presentations, requires 15 qualified leads, requires 100 phone calls. Let's use that as just our framework of an example. So what I'd like to do then is figure out, okay, how long is these 100 phone calls going to take me? And, I will schedule that on my calendar so that I actually have dedicated time focused, where I'm not going to be distracted, I'm not going to be checking emails, I'm not going to be doing other things. I'm just very simply going to be doing that task that's going to get me to the first component of getting to my 1 sale. The second thing I'm going to do is figure out how long it takes me to have a conversation to make that person qualified. So of the 100 phone calls that I did, 15 of them I have to spend a longer amount of time to make sure that those become qualified opportunities for me. So then I, again, block out that amount of time in my calendar. The next thing I need to do is the presentation. So really important, and it doesn't apply to all businesses, but in many of the businesses that I've done, I really like to preset my appointments or my presentations to a business. And what I mean by that is I will actually schedule time on my calendar before I ever have the presentation of here's when I'm going to do the presentations. And I make sure that, you know, when I start scheduling them, that I schedule them around what works in my calendar. Because if all of a sudden I say I have a presentation at 12:30 and 2:30 on Tuesday, and somebody says, hey, can you do 1:30? Well, what ends up happening is I have to shift my whole schedule around to be able to accommodate that. Now, obviously you need to have some flexibility to accommodate your customers, but try to push them into time slots that you've already allocated so that you can make sure the rest of your calendar gives you time to do the necessary tasks to hit your goals. And then the last thing is what kind of time does it take to fulfill the order, you know, after the presentation is done and you make that sale. And so if you break down a month based upon what your goal is, so you start with the highest level goal, which is how much money do you want to make? And then you back into, okay, how many things do I need to do in whatever my respective job or business is to hit that goal? And then how many, you know, components make up that task to hit that, you know, that singular sale or singular item to hit my goal. And so understanding these things will help you to manage and structure your time better. And I always think about life in general is that I have a metric component in anything I do in my life that I can, you know, unpack and figure out exactly what are the components that I need to accomplish to hit that goal. And once I really understand that, it allows me to not only you know, control my own destiny in that I have a very quantifiable, you know, easy to understand plan on how I'm going to reach my goals, but I also can think about how I can ratchet up and improve on my goals. So let's go back to that example. You know, if I've been tracking my data and I understand that for me to get one sale and 3 presentations and 100 phone calls to get there, well, now I know I have something to improve upon. So what happens if all of a sudden I only need 90 calls to get those same 3 presentations? And what happens if I only need 2 presentations to get that 1 sale? I can start working on the fail points, and that way I can start to increase my output without necessarily increasing my hours. And so then if I keep the same amount of hours, I can actually get a higher output with the same amount of effort as I improve. And if you don't understand those things, like you're not tracking these metrics, it's going to be very hard for you, you know, to know how to create a quantifiable plan. I get very frustrated when I hear people say, you know, I'm going to have a great month, or I'm going to have a great week or day or whatever it is. And I ask them, well, what is it that you're going to do that's going to make you have a great day, a great week, or a great month? And they're like, well, I'm just really fired up. I'm going to work really hard. Okay, well, I can understand that and appreciate that you're excited and appreciate that you want to work really hard. But what does that mean? Like, how do you quantify what really hard means? If you don't have these metrics that make up all the components of what you're trying to do, you're really just kind of aimlessly going out there and hoping that you're going to see improvement. You know, I'm not a big golfer, but I have some friends that are big golfers, and they always say you can practice for hours a day, but if you're practicing the wrong the wrong form, the wrong technique, you're actually doing more harm than you are good, because what you're doing is ingraining bad habits or bad techniques. And so as I think about you know, any business or opportunity that you're doing as well, it's the same thing. It's like if you don't have a prescriptive plan of what it is you're trying to do, all you're really doing is ingraining bad habits. So maybe you say, oh, I'm going to work really hard, I'm fired up, I'm going to have a great week, but in the same breath, you know, you're spending, you know, half your time shuffling papers from one side of the desk to the other, making it feel like you're really busy, but all you're actually doing is, you know, a bunch of busy work that doesn't actually make you any money. So when you break down those components of what it is that drives revenue, well, now you can actually create that plan. And so I really like to think of the things that I have learned in my time of sales is you always have a quota. And the way that you maximize, you know, your quota and your goals and your comp plans is that you create actionable plans based upon the components that get the results that you're trying to get. So, you know, think about this with your respective job, your respective business. whatever it is your role is in the business, every one of us have different components that make up success. We just need to understand those. We need to figure out the math behind how many of those things we have to do to get the expected result, and then writing down an actual plan. And writing down a plan is only the first step of it, because once you have that plan written, you actually have to be able to action that plan. And the way that you action that plan is that you, on a daily basis, look at what your singular goals are for that day. And in the event that you fell short of your goals, because that will happen, things, life gets in the way, business things happen, emergencies happen, but in the event that that happens, what you need to do is then schedule that missed opportunity into a future day, so that when you look at the course of a month, you can actually hit the goals that you want. And let me explain that a little bit further. Let's say my goal is to go back to this example, to make 100 phone calls in a day. And something happened and one of my kids got sick and I had to go pick them up from school, or a customer emergency happened and I had to go and handle that issue that took me away from my scheduled call time that I had, or maybe an appointment no-showed on me. So what I need to do then is find time allocation in a future day, hopefully in that next day or two, but if it has to be further out, at least in the same month, where I can actually schedule those missed calls, schedule those missed presentations, so that when I look at the end of the month, I have the success that I want, even if I did miss a day. Because what a lot of people end up doing is they don't adjust their schedule, and then they come to the end of the month and they're like, gosh, I don't know what happened. Everything was working so well, and they forgot about those 2 days where maybe their kid was sick and they had to go pick them up from school, or maybe a customer emergency happened and they weren't able to actually accomplish their daily tasks. So you have to be really, really diligent about not only following your schedule, but tracking your schedule against what your metrics are, and then being able to adjust accordingly in the event that something got missed, throughout your planning time of the prior day or week. And if you really focus on having, quantifiable, measurable results, you're going to be able to maximize what it is you do in a day. So treat your life like you would treat a sales quota. Hold yourself accountable to what it is you're trying to do, and create a very defined plan, calendar everything, and you'll have the best chance of success. So I hope you found this helpful. Again, trying to put a good message out there, and really appreciate all of you that have tuned in. Please make sure to comment and like, and most of all, it would mean the world to me if you would share this out with people that you think would benefit from it. We can only get the word out if we share. So thank you so much. Enjoy the day. I'm Ron Dichter. Have a good one.